Yeah, I will start now with what we are doing here. And this is our third edition of Opening India to the World. This is a webinar series where we are focusing a lot on international investments, cross-border investments. What can we do to bring global investors to India? What are the opportunities here? We have done two webinars before, and the Indian audience and the expat audience that we got, they were really impressed by what we are offering. So, and of course, I want to welcome Charlie and Vanessa from Carta. We will The flow of the event would be that I would give a little bit of an introduction of vFounder Circle, and then we can start with the our fireside chat and the AMA that we want to do. Let me also do a very quick poll before I begin. Actually, yeah. Siddharth, if you could launch a poll that we have here for our audience. So this is a very quick poll just to get a sense of the kind of audience we have here today. We want to know if you have, in fact, you have invested in startups before, or any cross-border investments that you all have done. This is just for my understanding, and maybe I could shape a couple of questions and answers according to the data I get here. I see a lot of you all have invested in startups before. In fact, couple of you are very experienced investors. That is great to know. But I see that a lot of you have not done any cross-border investment. So I think this is a great opportunity to touch on that topic. If any of you are still haven't polled, please do poll. This is just for our information and for us to know who do we have in our audience. So yeah. So while all of you are polling, I would just go through the flow of the event again. We would go through the introduction of the founder. We will do a fireside chat and we'd be open for AMA. While I am presenting and while I'm talking to Charlie, I would request all of you to keep sharing any question that you may have about the topic of this webinar in the Q&A box. Towards the end, when we do question and answers, I would unmute people, and maybe you all can ask your questions by yourselves to us. We want to make this a very interactive session. So yeah, we would be very happy to hear from you. While please do keep sharing the questions in the Q&A box. Thank you so much. I think we can end the poll now. And I will quickly share my PPT. Hello, everyone. I am Bhavna. I'm one of the co-founders of vFounder Circle. I will give a brief intro of what vFounder is doing, but I will go through some of the interesting trends of what is actually happening in the Indian ecosystem and why are we actually doing this webinar. We started 3.5 years ago. So this is basically the data from actually that time. We've seen continuous increase in investments in India. We have seen the increase in number of unicorns in India. India as a startup ecosystem has been maturing over the last 3-4 years. We have, of course, seen a lot of cycles in the past where a lot of investment came in India, went from India. But right now, again, a bull run is going on. We had a funding winter, but today I'll tell you some of the data that is really exciting for us as an organization that does invest in early stage startups. This is, I think, from the latest report that we were going through today. That is the number of deals that are happening in the Indian ecosystem have been constantly increasing. So while, yes, there have been ups and downs in the market, in the stock market, in general sentiment of investors, early stage deals especially have been increasing. And I think there has been a change in the Indian ecosystem in such a way that people are very excited about becoming entrepreneurs. And investors are also very excited about the Indian ecosystem and the long-term growth that they see here, right? We are the third biggest, largest ecosystem in the world in terms of startups, right? 9.7K investors have, participated in funding rounds, and that's a very good number. It's up, I think, from a couple of hundred from last year. Another interesting data point that we find, again, very encouraging is majority of the investors who are participating in these funding rounds. One would expect that a lot of them would be VCs and institutional investors, which is actually not the case. It's actually a lot of angels who are participating. And that, again, is a very interesting data point for us because we are an angel network. And we are very, very optimistic about the role of angels in the ecosystem. We have been working with a lot of Indian angel investors. We are very excited about the opportunity of what we are doing now with global angels as well. We found a circle, essentially an angel network, but we are now much more than an angel network. We have a tech platform and we have funds that actually enable us to invest at every single stage. So today we are a multi-stage and multi-sector investment organization. This is essentially the ecosystem that we have created for us. We have funds, a VC fund, Domestic Cat 1, Global Angels Fund. We have an accelerator for very early stage companies. We have a network that actually does a lot of pre-Series A, Series A, Series B, and Series C investments as well. We have a huge co-investor network. We have a network of syndicates that actually come and bring a lot of deals from us from all across the globe. We have a tech platform where we have 13,000 investors registered with us. We are present in 63 countries, and I will come more on that global data as I move forward. This has been our journey, just a snapshot of, what we have been doing in the ecosystem. We started October 2020, so we are close to completing our 4 years. We started off with investing a small check of 50K in early stage companies, and now we have gone up to doing 2 million in a couple of companies. And yeah, again, this data that a lot of investors can start investing with us at a minimum of 10K, and sometimes even lower amounts depending on the stage of the company. This is our footprint in India and across the globe. There's 60 plus countries like I covered, and majority of the traffic that you see, that we see at least on the website, is from USA, UK, UAE, Australia, Dubai, and Singapore as well. Mm. This is again a snapshot of our portfolio. Over the last 3.5 years, we have invested in 150 plus startups, again, across sectors. Some of the top performing ones are here in front of you. And the average multiplier that we have seen so far, or we're observing, is 5.8x. This is again very encouraging. Some of these companies, we have actually done a couple of up rounds for them, like Zip, Blue Smart being one of them. We have funded them thrice now. Even Oban, I would say, we have funded them thrice. So again, we participate in all up rounds as much as possible. Wherever we see our investors are very encouraged to, take part in the up rounds of those companies. In fact, I was having a very interesting discussion today with an angel investor based out of UAE who wanted to understand why angel networks are very active at Series B and Series C stage as well. I would probably cover it if it comes in our discussion, but it's another interesting facet about the Indian ecosystem and the way funding is happening here. This is a little bit about what has been covered about us in the media. Ever since we began, we have kept a consistent volume of companies funded. And the first year we did, I think, 43, next year 60 odd companies, actually 71. Next year 80 something, 83. And I think 100, we would be reaching 100 and 100 plus, I think, even this year. So we have been the most active angel network in India since last 4 years, 3.5 years. Yeah, this is more about us. I think we have been covered in different publications. I mean, I have also been covered multiple times. It's again honor to be recognized for the contribution to the ecosystem. Yeah. I want to briefly touch upon, what we're doing with angel networks and with angel investors outside of India. A couple of pain points that we realized a lot of angels face while they're outside of India is that they don't have quality deal flow. I think that is one reason why we want to work with angels a little bit more deeply outside of India, because I mean, we talk to them on a daily basis, and this is what we are hearing from them. There is a lot of trust deficit sometimes because they don't know what network to join, or how to work with people if you're not really in the same geography, right? Also, I mean, concerns over the working style of people, like people in India would work differently. Angels who are sitting outside have different expectations. So we have been doing our part in probably bridging that gap as much as we could to make them understand that we are very global organization. We are already working with founders in different countries, and the same we want to do with a lot of investors outside as well. There has been lack of platform driven experience. A lot of angels have complained to us that they don't know how to track their portfolio, for example. They don't know if there is a streamlined process for onboarding and constant communication with the investment platform. That again, we have been able to solve it through our own platform called Invest, through which a lot of our angels are able to track their portfolio, plus also discover new deals. Uh, Another problem that a lot of angels told us was that if they're outside of India, they would prefer to invest in any other currency, but I mean, not INR. And of course, they're not very clear on the tax rules, and there's a lot of red tape that they have faced earlier. Again, we have a team of people who have been assisting angels and founders across the globe, and we are very well equipped to handle all of those queries. So we think that we are actually at a very good place in our own journey where we want to work very actively with angels who want to take part in this India growth journey. So yeah, this is, I think, again, in a nutshell, what we offer to people who are looking to work with us closely. We'd be happy to, provide you the platform experience. We have regulated fund structures that could provide a lot of options to angels who are sitting abroad and they want to invest here, saving money, the GST and the taxes. We'd be able to help with that as well. And ease of exit, more importantly, that control or that connection to the company or the founder to figure out a good exit path for them, and also that while remittance, there's no other issue that they face. The deals that we have very recently closed, I'm just pointing them out here because these are the ones that got really good reception as well. Blue Smart and Crick Heroes. I think Crick Heroes got a lot of reception from Singapore, US, Blue Smart from UAE. Zip is the latest opportunity that we have opened. It's the Series C round, and this is the third time that we are taking part in their journey. And again, we have good relations with the founder. He's shown a lot of trust in us, and he does want our angel investors again to participate in their round. And this is despite them having multiple VCs on the cap table. So this is what we are doing right now. And this is the team that is building this with me and my partners who are based out of different cities. We are today almost a 50 employee organization with presence in 5 cities in India: Noida, Mumbai, Bangalore, Dehradun, and Surat. And these are just snapshot of couple of community events that we have done in India and outside of India. This would be from Dubai, from Singapore, where we have been going and sponsoring events or having a presence felt, because we do have community of investors there, and we do like going there time to time just to meet all of our investors in person. Yeah, and that is a very, very brief intro of what we have been doing in the ecosystem. And today's fireside chat, I am so excited to have Charlie here from Carta. And I would, of course, invite Charlie to give his introduction. But this topic is very, very interesting and relevant for us. And we couldn't think of anyone better than Charlie to contribute to this. So hello, Charlie. How are you? And thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Bhavna. Just want to make sure you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Obviously, we've been doing some partnerships with We Found a Circle for a little while now, and it's great to see from what you've just presented how things are going from strength to strength and really kind of connecting the international investment community, and kind of helping companies to get investment from international sources too into the Indian ecosystem. So that's fantastic to see, and yeah, really pleased to be here, and thank you for having me.
So Charlie, this is because I know that you guys are also trying to expand in India, and I will start my questions. And before I do that, I would request all the angels who are here or anyone who's interested in this topic, please keep sharing your questions in the Q&A box. We would take all of those questions. In fact, I would give you the speaking access as well so that you can ask follow-up questions to us as well. So my first question, and I don't want to make it like a first question, second question thing, but Charlie, it'll be great if you talk a little bit about Carta. Like, I know you're a
Mhm.
big global organization. You have been working with startups and investors. So, just an overview for our audience here, that what are you guys focused on, and maybe a little bit more also with respect to India, right? Like, what's your focus, or what's your what's exciting you about India right now?
Sure. So for those who are unfamiliar with Carta, we've been around for just over 10 years now, headquartered out of San Francisco. However, over the last few years, we've been building a regional presence physically on the ground across Asia Pacific and the Middle East. So I'm based here in Singapore, where we have about 50 people now on the ground, kind of paying attention to and trying to help founders and VCs alike through Carter's software and services. In short, the way that we help founders and startups is we're the world's leading cap table platform. We have over 40,000 companies globally that are using Carta for their cap table management, their ESOP management, their fundraising tools, the ability to issue like instruments like safe notes, for example. But as companies become more mature, and need to are subject to like audit as well. We also help with valuations of international standards and American standards too. So we're very much kind of a one-stop shop for governance and fundraising, for startups. On the other side of the business, which has been a growing side of Carta for the last few years now, we're also the world's largest fund admin platform for VCs. So we work with several thousand VCs across the world, kind of helping them to streamline and automate some of those kind of more archaic components, of fund admin too. So that's really allowed us, given us a very beneficial position where we have this convergence where, companies that are raising money are, liaising and working with VCs and investors that are already using Carta too. So it helps a lot in terms of visibility, transparency as well. So that's kind of a high level overview of what we do. Yeah, and I'd be happy to share more details with folks afterwards if they're interested.
And what is it about India that is very interesting to you? Because I think I did ask you
Mm.
this earlier when we were chatting, right? You
Mhm.
have been there in the market for a very long time, and I think India's always been part of one of the, sub-regions that you sort of work in. But what has changed now that you want to sort of expand in India? And what is any trend that you see or anything that is very exciting to you?
Yeah, so India's always been a market where we've done business with Carta at Carta. So we work with I guess some of the household names in India, like the Razor Pays, the Qatar Books. We work with CloudSec and a few hundred other companies across the region as well. Companies like CleverTap, for example. Um, but I joined Carter around a year ago, and my experience, I've been in SaaS businesses for the last kind of 7 or 8 years now. And I have sold to and managed teams that sell into India. So I've kind of got like a bit of a bias towards India. I've always been really kind of kind of taken aback in a positive way in terms of like the entrepreneurial spirit that you see in India, and the just the innovation that you see across the market as well, across India in terms of the companies that are coming up, the ambition of the founders, they want the desire to expand not just domestically but internationally as well. So I've always found that quite compelling personally. So when I joined Carter around a year ago, I kind of made it a mission to make sure that we put some more focus on India as a region. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, it's the market is trending in a positive trajectory right now. But notwithstanding that, India is a fantastic market. There's some really, really great startups, and not just the big names, but also the ones that are starting to emerge and starting to scale and starting to grow. And we genuinely feel that with our platform and with our experience, across India and across the world, that we can actually help to add value to these founders and to these startups.
So, the first Indian startup that you worked with would be how long ago? I mean, just in
Personally, if it's me personally, I mean, I worked for a company named HubSpot before I was at Carta. So I think I sold my first deal to India back in like through SaaS at least
Hmm.
2017, it must have been.
Oh,
So back then, yeah. And it was oh, I can't remember the name of the company. It's gonna bother me now for the rest of the night. But what they sold was gourmet dog food. I remember that much.
oh,
So yes, they sold gourmet dog food. It was like a subscription service, and it would kind of for people with, I guess, additional disposable income that really love their pets or love their dogs. And they had the ability to order like really great, like high nutritional food for their pet. So can't remember the
yeah.
company. That's going to annoy me for the rest of the night. But I remember the company in terms of what they did.
Yeah, pet market is actually on the rise. I mean, we have invested in a pet care grooming company, like grooming products.
Mm,
And we have also invested in a pet boarding company, which we were very, very excited about. I mean, we are in the process of investing. And the whole idea that people with disposable income and those who have pets, they actually want
mm,
proper boarding places, branded boarding areas for their pets in
mm.
case they go to holidays. And I mean, the problem statement being that where do you give your pets if you're traveling, right? I mean, so you need a place which is slightly standardized that has the grooming services also, and plus a place to, uh, like a pet hostel or something, you could call it. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's a
I'm
good
pr
idea actually.
pretty sure when I was in Bangalore last month, I saw like a luxury spa for pets as well. So
Yeah,
looked a lot more expensive than the ones that I go to.
the company I'm mentioning is also Bangalore based.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and coming on, a couple of companies that you may have come across in India. I know you've been making India trips and you're meeting a lot
Mm,
of founders and investors.
mm.
So what kind of founders are you meeting, or are there any ideas that you came across that you were very excited by?
I mean, especially over the last couple of trips, I must have literally met scores, if not hundreds of founders. Because we've been having so many kind of networking events and really just trying to immerse ourselves in the market and just learn from people. And just really get a really good kind of pulse check on the Indian market in terms of where it's going and kind of what the trends are. Um, there's almost too many to kind of pick out one or two of the ideas that I kind of really caught my mind. I remember I was at an event a few weeks back, which was kind of being co-hosted with HSBC, and there was just so many like budding like entrepreneurs in there, and a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing these days in India, and probably no surprise.
Mm.
Um, some really kind of innovative and creative ways of leveraging AI and kind of also kind of in fintech as well. They tend to be the two hottest kind of sectors or industries that we tend to hear ideas about. But yeah, just from the visits that I've had over the last couple of months, it goes about saying that the creativity of Indian founders and the way that they think outside of the box, it doesn't surprise me that companies or investors wanting to invest in India are starting to increase because they're not just taking an idea and trying to make it domestic. They're thinking of new, bold, unique ideas and trying to internationalize them.
And actually moving away from India a little bit, because I know that
Mm.
you have access to a lot of data and insights from different regions of the world. So what are the global trends right now? I mean, what sectors are hot for investors globally? What sectors maybe are attracting the most funding?
Yeah, I mean, kind of across the board. Like, it wouldn't be too surprising to hear that AI is still the buzzword and still very much everyone's very, very bullish about it at the moment. And I think that's kind of here to stay for the foreseeable future. Um, again, similar to what we see in India, but a lot of stuff in terms of fintech as well is really going from strength to strength across not just the Indian market, but also markets like Singapore and elsewhere outside of the region. And we're seeing a lot of investment into kind of health and biotech companies. That's that's been a trend which has been pretty present over the last kind of couple of years or so. And also ESG, right? That's
Hmm.
really starting to kind of position itself as one of the top four, top five industries globally where there are investments. And there's probably some honorable mentions as well, but I'd say kind of climate tech. I saw an article the other day that I think it was in Q3 of last year, like it's kind of reaching like a record high in terms of levels of investment. We're seeing so much stuff in terms of renewable energy and urban tech as well. So you're getting all of these kind of like new sectors, which, if you put a rewound 10 years ago, maybe they wouldn't have existed or kind of been classed in these categories. But again, with AI, these companies raise more cash and were valued more highly from the data that Carta has at its disposal. And we're seeing sectors like cybersecurity having an uptick in the first half of this year, thanks to the likes of AI and how that's being embedded into cybersecurity. And probably the last thing I'd say is, kind of what we're observing is Web3 kind of had a H2 to forget on a global scale last year, and really kind of dipped in terms of levels of investment, but we're starting to see kind of a steady rise there again. Not quite back to the same levels as H1 of last year, but definitely kind of overcoming that kind of bump that it encountered kind of midway through last year.
Okay. No, that's interesting. I think so. These are some of the trends that we see are also being reflected in the Indian market, right? I mean,
Mm,
the global trend of AI, Gen AI, I think ever since ChatGPT came and broke the market.
mm,
I mean, there was a time, I think I can easily differentiate it like pre ChatGPT and post ChatGPT for AI startups, right? I mean, it was
mm,
all AI before ChatGPT came. And after ChatGPT came, everything was we have Gen AI, we will
mm.
incorporate Gen AI when we grow. So, I mean, do you also hear those buzzwords that, people throw around that, we are a Gen AI company or we, we
Yeah, yeah. No matter where you go in the world, I mean, my role at Carter, I cover Australia, Southeast Asia, India, and the rest of South Asia, and also the Middle East. So you get speak to a wide range of founders and startups from quite a broad range of territories and cultures. But Gen AI is definitely the buzzword that you're hearing across all of that region. And when I speak to my counterparts in the US and my counterparts in Europe, it's exactly the same thing. So very much a deep focus on that right now. And again, I'd probably say that it's at a global level, stuff like fintech's still very prevalent, but I'm probably hearing it a little bit more right now in markets like India as well, especially with a lot of companies kind of reincorporating back into India due to the regulations.
Correct, right. The reverse flipping is again a very
Mm.
interesting thing that we're seeing. And I mean, just because you touched upon it, I mean, how do you see this I mean, trend of reverse flipping, like companies coming back to India, which was something unimaginable, I think, a couple of years ago, because they would always look at Singapore or US as more stable markets to raise money. But now, of course, with the growth in the market, and I think the access to capital also has significantly increased, that companies don't think that they need to be based out of India? Or is there any regulatory part to it as well?
Um, yeah, it's interesting. Historically, Carter's had a lot of experience with helping not just Indian companies, but companies from other regions of the world when they go to the States to incorporate or when they go to countries like Singapore to incorporate. And I think it's just a testament to how strong the Indian market is right now, not just in terms of the startup ecosystem, but just the general economy as well. In the UK, we have a term like steady Eddie, right? Like India's really being that over the last few years with its kind of overall GDP growth. And there are estimations that over the next kind of 10 years or so, it's going to kind of pretty say like 6.7% there or thereabouts. When you compound that with the burgeoning middle class of India, the large domestic market, these are really appealing for investors. So it's only natural that companies where there are, I would say, uh, kind of more appealing or better facilitated public markets like there are right now in India.
Yeah.
Like they're starting to outpace markets like Hong Kong, for example, last year, and being more resilient and more defiant than the US, where people would typically list. So um, it wasn't something that was necessarily foreseen, but now it's happening. It kind of makes complete sense, right? Because you have really great SaaS and B2C and fintech companies merging in India, and they have good recurring revenue models. This is what investors love, right? They love to have predictability in terms of and forecastability in terms of revenue. And because of the product type or the service type, they can scale pretty quickly as well and be prepared for, IPO or public market sooner as well. So this is really appealing to investors.
And interestingly, to something that you just mentioned, um, a lot of Indian companies right now are sort of, so the SaaS companies
Hmm.
particularly, they have consistent recurring revenue from markets other than India. So they build here, but they're actually targeting other markets. They're targeting US, they're targeting Singapore, they're targeting, in fact, I met an investor from Japan a couple of months ago, and he said that most of the software in Japan, in let's say the restaurant industry or even banking, it's built by Indians. And I was very surprised. I probably didn't have that data point from on the Japanese market actually. So is that's something that is very exciting for us personally, because
Hmm.
while we are looking to work with investors outside of India, one aspect of that work is also to figure out how to prepare Indian companies to go global. While some of them have figured it out, especially in SaaS, right? They know that actually they would be able to build a good recurring revenue from a market outside of India. But we are also looking at companies in fintech. We are looking at companies in space tech. We are looking at companies in D2C that are very, very excited to figure out a market outside of India. So what do you think of this trend as well? Indian companies catering to, outside of India as primary market.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the short answer is, it's about time, right? I mean, India's been a hotbed of talent and innovation for such a long time, and even in the years I've spent in SaaS sales, there's been Indian competitors that have tried going international, maybe haven't been able to be as successful as they wish to be because they didn't get the level of investment that they necessarily needed to kind of fulfill those expansion plans. Um, but now, with the level of investment that's coming into India from international investors, that also brings international expertise as well, right? So once you have that expertise, you can leverage that knowledge, you can leverage that experience that these investors have seen maybe in markets like the US or Singapore or elsewhere in like Europe or the UK, for example, in terms of what works and what doesn't work. So I actually think it's a really good collaboration for Indian companies that are looking to expand internationally and to take on global markets to partner up and to get mentored and to have collaboration with international investors that have a track record in something similar, right? It's very much mutual benefit in terms of the partnership. So if you can tap into that experience, if you can learn from these investors that have had success or learnings, trying to help companies do something similar in these international markets, I think it's going to be very beneficial for Indian companies moving forward.
Mm. One question that I thought I was while you answering.
Hmm.
Um, how do you think Indian founders can prepare themselves to raise money from outside India? And that could be from either angels who are sitting outside of India, or it could be institutional investors. I know that it's not the easiest to reach out to them, but I know that Carta does also help a little bit, on that front.
Well, my go-to answer is leverage We Found a Circle, first of all, as a first port of call. So that goes without saying. Um, but yeah, I guess kind of broadly speaking, um, what I would do in that position if I was trying to find investment from outside of India, I would do some research on which VCs or investors have a track record, first of all, of investing in Indian companies, and making sure that if you're doing so, that they are either sector agnostic or focus on your sector, right? You just want to kind of start filtering down the companies as quickly as all of the investors as quickly as possible. And then you want to make sure pertaining to the stage at which you're at, right? Whether it's an angel investor or whether it's a VC, making sure that you're filtering down by their track record of which stage or which round they tend to write checks at. So, you don't want to be going after a growth stage VC if you're actually raising a seed round or kind of looking for a few $100,000 versus a few $1 million. Once you've kind of got that short list, and one thing I've noticed about India, especially, is like the network effect, right? People are very well connected, very, very well networked in India. So if you don't have a connection to that VC or to that investor, there's probably a decent chance you know someone or have met someone in the past that does. So I'd always try and leverage those warm introductions first. Now, failing that, there's still the ability to kind of do outbound, if you like, or do like a cold outreach. Now, I'm someone that's done and been involved in sales for the last 13, 14 years. So if you were going to go down that path, what I'd certainly recommend is, don't be sending a generic pitch deck or a generic message to these investors or to these VCs, because they receive an abundance of them every single day, hundreds of them every single month, right? So you need to do something to stand out. So I would make it short, sharp, because you have to bear in mind the persona that you're trying to go after. Someone that doesn't, it's kind of time poor. You need to catch their attention straight away, but make it bespoke, right? Make it curated to that individual. And that might give you a chance of kind of getting that inroad. But I think you alluded to this a moment ago. I'd also recommend kind of keeping an eye out for events where there's a good chance that there would be international investors or international VCs that, if you're in India, of course, you've got the Global FinTech Festival next month in Mumbai. That would be a great place to go. And I think at that event next month, you even have like government bodies like the WFC representing effectively the Dubai government, who are actually trying to attract companies to go to Dubai and actually try to get investments into international companies. So would certainly recommend attending those types of events. And then how Carta kind of helps a bit more proactively in this arena is that we actually run sessions at events like Singapore FinTech Festival. We're hosting something in Sydney in a couple of months at South by Southwest, where we do kind of like investor hours or like founder matchmaking with investors. So if you're kind of a customer of Carta or familiar with your startup, what we'll do is, again, kind of filter through what kind of investors you're trying to get in front of, by which stage, which sector, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're trying to matchmake and kind of almost kind of provide like a speed dating kind of environment for founders and investors alike. We did this very successfully last year at the Singapore FinTech Festival, where I think we had over close to 400 founders and over 150 investors over a few days. And just recently at the Dubai FinTech Summit as well, we had a similar concept where we had about 75 founders and 75 investors all in the same room, just kind of bringing them together. And these kind of forums really allow founders to kind of to get that exposure and to get their brand out there and to get their story out there to international investors that otherwise might not be able to hear of them.
No, I think all of those are very valid points. And yes, I mean, because you mentioned early in the early part of your answer that yes, we Founders Circle is definitely one of the
Yes,
options that,
number
start
one.
come to number one. True. I mean, if any company is looking to raise funds from outside of India, we're definitely, expanding our roots very aggressively outside of India. I also want to ask you about, what about global investors, Charlie? Do they tell you that we're interested in India and, tell us how to invest? And they could be like angels or they could be like institutional investors. So because that is the other side of the puzzle, right? When we work with companies and we want to, let's say bring them to other countries, we have to foster a base of very active investors in those geographies. We are doing it very actively now. Because I've realized that if you don't have really like enough people on the ground, then it's very difficult to sort of do that do the coordination, fix meetings, or
Mm.
have someone who could guide you in the local ecosystem. So I mean, because you are already in multiple geographies, so do you get a lot of questions from global investors that they want to invest in India, and what do you suggest them?
So yes is the short answer. The more that we speak with investors, the more that we hear about their thoughts and their attention turning towards markets like India. Again, just as a quick example, I was both in Delhi and Bangalore last month, and we were partnering with a Singaporean-based VC named M Venture Partners, and they were going on a roadshow where they actually went to I think we went to Mumbai as well, and maybe Chennai too, if I'm not mistaken. But we caught them for the Delhi and the Bangalore kind of legs of their roadshow, and they're just one example of a number of VCs that we're seeing from Asia and further afield, or like Southeast Asia and further afield, turning their attention to the Indian market for some of the reasons that we discussed earlier. But if, kind of alluding to kind of, or making reference to your question there, if you're looking to kind of get into the Indian market, it can be a hard place to navigate if you're not familiar with it, right? And it can be the same to any market, but I think it's particularly true in India. So building relationships with local stakeholders, including like, knowing the incubators, the accelerators, the law firms out there as well, and maybe some VCs too, and definitely like connecting with organizations like We Found a Circle, and speaking to other international investors that have kind of been there and done that already, and they can kind of share their stories with you and kind of what to avoid and what to focus on. Would definitely be something I'd recommend to investors looking to kind of jump on into the Indian ecosystem.
And I think because you have like a treasure trove of data on the cap tables of the companies. So I mean,
Mm.
have you guys ever done that analysis that, let's say, um uh I mean, the number of angels versus institutional investors? Like, I mean, we have data, of course, that in India, the uptick in funding that has happened, there's a big contribution from angels. Like, do you have any insights like that in terms of participation of angels from outside of India in India? Any data that has it increased, or yeah, I mean, is that a data that you've actually tracked?
So I'd say, I guess anecdotally, I don't have any data at hand as it relates to this, but we do see a lot more when we're speaking with prospective customers and existing customers, in fact, here in India, that they are raising more capital from angel investors, and not just angel investors domestically. Again, they're also attracting investment at earlier stages from international investors too. So I think, the trends that we're talking about today are very much kind of evidence in what we've kind of witnessed firsthand speaking with Indian companies. But we're also seeing it in some other regions too. I think India is definitely becoming more prevalent than other regions, but we see a lot of, yeah, it's a little bit different, but like in markets like Australia, for example, there's a lot of kind of crowdfunding at early stages as well. We notice a bit of an uptick because there's a lot more early stage investments happening in markets like Singapore right now versus later stage investments. So again, it's kind of given rise to more angel investors getting onto cap tables.
Okay. No, that is um very interesting. I mean, this would be a data that I think we could probably exchange notes on later, because this is
Mm.
like superbly interesting to us. We are, of course, very actively quoting angels from outside of India. And I think we believe, because this is our fundamental thesis when we began We Founder Circle, that you cannot be a passive investor. You have to be an active investor if you really want to help a company succeed. In fact, I was actually talking to a UAE based investor just in the afternoon on similar lines, that he wanted to know, how do you ensure exits for companies? And I said, see, I cannot ensure an exit, but what I can do is that the journey of a startup from pre-seed to, let's say, a IPO stage, all the things that are required for them to move to that let's say IPO stage, I can help
Mm.
in that. I can help in networking. I can help in providing access to mentorship. I can help in getting access to, let's say, good mentors and finance and knowledge and guidance and all of those things. But no one can really ensure that, you're going to get an exit. I mean,
Mm.
exits is again, I think, a very fascinating metric that you all must be tracking, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do we help companies with IPO readiness as well. So we do see kind of an uptick in companies across the wider region that are actually coming to us now and saying, "Hey, we're actually thinking about taking this public, talking about kind of hitting the public markets and IPOing. Like, how can Carta help with us that? Help us with that." In fact, got a small plug, but our COO is actually hosting a webinar with Carta next week with the head of Nasdaq in terms of how to prepare for IPO. So it's something that we're seeing a bit more of a trend kind of bubbling at the surface too. And we're also seeing in some of more of the emerging markets, like Indonesia, for example, where there's a lot more kind of M&A happening, but also some exits and some selling of businesses too.
Cool. I mean, that sounds actually very good. And I think that would be an interesting webinar for even us to attend. So I would be more than happy if you could, share the link for that. I think now it's time that maybe I should take some questions because I see a couple of people have been asking questions, but I think Vanessa has answered them well. I think you guys are curious to know if you would have any credits from Carta. I think I saw a couple of questions around that, and I think Vanessa has already answered that whoever is attending this webinar would have access to some discounts. I think you guys will receive an email on that. And that is great. Anyone who has questions, keep posting them in the Q&A box. I'm just starting the Q&A session. And if you could also raise your hand to give me an idea what question you have. A couple of people, I see Praveen has asked a question. He's also raising a hand. So I'll give you speaking access, Praveen, and you can ask your question. Um, okay, Praveen, you have lowered your hand. So Amit, I'll probably, okay, Praveen is first.
Hey, Bhavana. Hi,
Hi,
Charlie.
Praveen. Hi, hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this session. My apologies. I joined in late. Yeah. So, Charlie, uh, I was attending the session with our V Circle founders like last couple of weeks back, and we have invested good amount in our last startup. Thanks to Bhavana because she was able to connect with us. And yeah, even I'm curious, given the risk factors associated with this initial startup seed fundings, is there a mechanism wherein we can bring in like capital hedging, at least the initial investments that angels actually put in? Are there any measures that we can come up with which would hedge accordingly so that more people would be interested in?
So I think it's a question. I think Charlie, maybe you can give an international perspective, and I will give perspective from the Indian market. So what he's saying is for angel investors who invest in startups, it's a very risky bet. So are
Mm.
there any capital protection measures? And since you're so, I mean, you're based out of Singapore and you're very well tuned with the ecosystem there. So is there something that you've seen happening there?
I mean, I'd probably want to kind of get a bit more detail in terms of what the question's asking. Sorry, 'cause I've not really come across the term
Okay,
like hedging with angel investment. So
okay.
yeah, I want
Charlie,
to answer as best as I can.
Probably I can answer because I understand where this question is coming from. So Praveen, what happens as a platform? The work that we do, we try to provide you all the diligence that we can do for startups, right? I mean, that's actually our job. In terms of capital protection measures, we could make sure that we could ensure certain partial exits, and secure that from the founder. but I don't think there are any capital protection measures besides this that we have actively taken. I mean, if there is anything that you suggest, we can definitely look into it. But as a platform where we are stakeholders for our investors, for our own personal investments, and to the startup founders, we sort of have a balance to maintain where we want the startups to grow. Sometimes the journey is very risky, but we also want to ensure that we give enough exit options to our investors so that at least the principal amount is not lost. Besides that, I mean, is that answering your question, or is there something more that?
Absolutely, absolutely, Bhavna. That do confirms how risky our bets are. Having said that,
Okay.
I've recently had a conversation with a team which actually is providing that capital protection measures. I we can connect back later, and I'll walk you through how they are actually doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Praveen, for that. And I'll definitely connect on this. And this is very
Sure.
interesting because,
Yeah.
again, interestingly, you are the second investor to be asking this to me today,
Okay. Okay.
especially
Thank
the
you.
production part.
All
You can
right.
send
Thank
that
you,
to me as
Bhavna.
well. I'd be very interested to find out
Yeah.
more.
Uh,
It sounds like a relatively novel concept.
yes. Uh,
It is actually. Thanks, Praveen. Is there
yeah.
any follow-up question you have?
No, no, no. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Praveen. I'll let Amit speak. Hi, Amit. I've given you speaking access, Amit, so you can unmute and ask your question. I guess probably there's an issue on his side, but he's already asked a question in Q&A. So I'll ask you, Charlie, it's for you. What is your
Sure.
DTM strategy for Carta? I see you have wide product portfolio. Who are your competitors, or who do you closely associate to?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Amit. So with the regions that I cover at Carta, so ANZ, Southeast Asia, India, South Asia, Middle East. So it's again quite a broad remit. Our go to market is actually quite different from market to market right now, because there's no kind of blanket approach that you can have for a variety of reasons. First of all, there's a whole host of different business and cultural nuances that you have to be mindful of and kind of be cognizant of if you want to do business somewhere successfully. But also just considering the nature of what we do here at Carta, there's a whole host of matters to do with respective jurisdictions, laws, governance as well, that we have to be mindful of too. But broadly speaking, what we are attempting to do in Carta across these regions is to actually empower founders to focus on growing their businesses without having to worry about being compliant or having to worry about giving transparency to their employees when it comes to their ESOP program, for example, or actually being able to be in a position to educate them on best practices that we've learned from, steadily building our book of business across this region, but also from our international counterparts too. So what we're aiming to do really is just kind of empower founders to focus on their businesses and allow us to handle all of this mundane but necessary stuff for them in the background in an automated fashion. And that's going to help them also go to market and to raise more capital too, right? Because you're going to have a single source of truth when it comes to cap table, etc. And again, as I mentioned earlier, VCs, especially if you're looking to go to international VCs, are going to probably expect you to use something like a Carta data room just because 65% of all capital raised through VCs globally goes through Carta already. Now that probably kind of leads me a little bit on to the next question around like who our competitors are. It depends on the market, to be honest. Whilst Carta is an international brand, we do come across domestic competitors, which I think is great because it's boring if there's only one person in the market. And I think competition is fantastic for everyone. And it also helps to I guess force us and kind of force our hand to make sure that we are tweaking and nuancing our product and our offering pertaining to these respective markets. So, I think globally, aside from Carta, you have companies like Pulley. I think Carta has about 90% of the global market. Pulley has about like 3 or 4% of the global market. Here in India, of course, Capita is an organization that we're familiar with. They're actually based out of Singapore, but I know they have a strong presence here in India. especially with very early stage organizations with their ESOP plans. And then, yes, again, depending on where you are in the world, there are other competitors. Middle East, there's Clara. In Australia, there's Cake. And they've got kind of good domestically focused products. But where they start to struggle is when those companies start to scale and grow and maybe look for international investment. The platform isn't quite built for those capabilities as of yet.
Amit, do you have any follow-up?
No, I think you answered that question. I was just going to ask, I mean, how do you, I mean, firstly, what you don't do as a product, to be honest. I can see it's a wider suite. You haven't left any room for others. But what's the go-to-market strategy? Like, how do you kind of go and pitch yourself in terms of differentiating yourself to the founders or the investors? I mean, I vaguely remember if I had a chat with someone at Carta maybe last year, but I can't remember if it was you guys or somebody else when I was looking for a platform for my investors. But yeah, like the question is on a go-to-market and the value prop in terms of where do the founders actually start or the investors actually start when they want to engage with the platform. Eventually, I know they would grow in some way as the series rounds goes and investor increase. So I understand that pattern, but where would they kind of start on your platform?
Yeah, so just to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly there, I mean, like kind of at what stage would these investors and these founders or startups actually start leveraging a platform like Carta? Is that correct?
Yes. And I'm talking more from
Sure.
a startup's perspective, right? Like very early stage,
Yeah.
you know, somebody is embarking on this journey, doing his first seed round,
Mm.
comes to the Carta. What is he expecting? I mean, is it
Yeah.
just a tool or there is the other shebang which comes along with it?
Shebang's not a word I've heard in ages. I love it. There's a lot of other shebang as well, I mean, but yes. So I think Carta has a reputation, especially outside of the States, of being a platform for any like later stage companies. And that might just be because as we were kind of growing organically, and we were kind of getting inbound inquiries when we were just based out of America, they tend to be from larger organizations, from the kind of the international ecosystem. But we work with businesses in India, Singapore, Australia, the Middle East, wherever it might be, where they have just incorporated up until they're ready to IPO. So we have, we're a SaaS platform. That's the crux of what we do. We do couple it with services as well, which I can touch on in a moment. But it's like a modular type of SaaS platform, right? So we have like an entry level kind of module for early stage founders, like to help them with their fundraising tools and their data rooms and making sure their cap table is actually accurate and reflective of what it needs to be. And then as they start to grow, they might need to then start issuing an ESOP program to their employees. And so there's a module for that as well. And as they start to grow and scale, then they might need to be subject to valuations, for example, right? And that's something else that we can help out with. So effectively what I'm saying is from day one up until you exit or you IPO, Carta has you covered, basically. So I understand that the perception has always been that Carta really helps later stage companies, but actually the vast majority of our customers globally, and we're seeing an increasing trend in places like India too. It's actually companies like less than 25 employees, kind of have less than 25, 30 people on the cap table as well. So very much able to kind of help across the entire spectrum of a startup's life cycle.
Got it. Thanks. All good.
Thanks, Amit, for your questions. Before we move to a couple of other questions that I actually have, and I'm getting some questions on WhatsApp as well, I would like to request my team to do the last poll that we have, because we're sort of reaching towards the end of the session. So I would prefer to do the poll right now than wait till the very, very end. This poll is for all the audience here, and if they want to connect with us to know more about our platform, about the global membership or investment opportunities, etc., I think this is the opportunity. Please poll here, and we'll connect with you towards the end of after this webinar. Charlie, one question that I got is because you're in Singapore. I mean, is there any trend that you've seen in let's say in the investors in Singapore, like if they want to invest in India, is there any insights that you have, that if there's anyone in Singapore who would want to invest in India, if there's any way or anything that you know about it?
Yeah, again, so I wouldn't have like data at my disposal, just more kind of, we have a very strong network of VCs and investors here in Singapore, especially because we are, boots on the ground, and we've kind of organically built our reputation up here in Singapore. And as I was mentioning earlier, we were just on a roadshow a few weeks ago with one Singaporean VC as they were going across India and actually looking to invest in businesses. And we're hearing of similar examples that have already happened, but also being planning to happen too. So I think Singapore has always, just in terms of how it thinks about investments as a nation, but also I think that trickles down into its VCs and to its investors, has always been very pragmatic, and has always wanted to get involved in markets where there's a higher chance of return, right? And India very much is looking like that market, both now and obviously over the years to come. So yes, we're definitely hearing from our VC customers who use us for fund admin, but also just other VCs that we have partnerships with. They're asking us when we're coming back from India, like, hey, what are you hearing? What are the trends that you're seeing? Because they're actually an increased interest and appetite to explore further.
Okay, that's actually very interesting for us. Okay. There is a question here from Gopal. Gopal, I'll give you access to speak. I have. Do you want to ask your question?
Hey, Bhavna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hey, Charlie, it's a
Hi,
wonderful
Gopal.
session. Yeah, hi. It's a wonderful session you guys are organizing. See, we are an early stage startup here. Uh, I'm a friend who insists upon AngelList. He's a hunter actually. He's a product hunter. We typically follow AngelList for a long time now. So, what do you say? Like, what is the key difference between Carta and AngelList? I did had a meeting with Carta Singapore, maybe last month, and that is my first question. And the other one would be, do you plan to set up syndicates like what AngelList do? I mean, they're typically doing AngelList India. They are setting up syndicates for raising funds.
So I'll tackle the the second part of your question first. So Carta doesn't really get directly involved in syndicates like we found a circle. Obviously, there's
We do.
tremendous. Huh?
And I was just saying that we do.
Yeah. So we don't actually provide a platform of that nature. Carta does make some strategic investments. Actually, I guess in markets where like South Korea and actually in Africa, where we actually invest in similar companies to ours to actually kind of to help them out in those markets. We do help with syndicates to a degree when it comes to like SPVs, for example. It's not something that we see very, very often, but we do have those capabilities to help with SPVs. So yeah, but in terms of how we're different to AngelList, really, AngelList is better for kind of what we've seen, kind of like better for USA investors in the past. Carter's offering is just it's quite different, right? Like we're helping companies across the entirety of their journey, and also it depends on which product we're comparing with, right? Because AngelList have a variety of different products too.
So I'll take the question, Gopal, around the syndicate part because that actually concerns us directly. Gopal, are you based out of India or outside of India?
I'm based about. I mean, I'm typically from Chennai. My office is in Chennai, and I do have an office in Phoenix, in Arizona, in the USA also.
Okay, so we actively work with syndicates across the globe if they want to, let's say, so we are very close to AngelList, in fact, that way. If you are a founder who have your own set of investors and you just want to use our instrument to get all of the investment together, you can use our platform. Secondly, if you are an investor and you have sourced a company and you have your set of investors who want to put money in the company, you can use our platform as well to syndicate that amount. So if you want to have a conversation around it, we can connect after the webinar.
Oh, thanks, Bhavana. We will discuss later. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Gopal. So I think I can take the last question here. Pulkit has raised his hand. So maybe Pulkit, I'm giving you access to speak and maybe you want to ask your question.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the event, firstly, Bhavna. And hi, Charlie. I hope you're doing well. You both
Hi.
are doing well. So I saw a figure there, right? A graph which was showing that 57% of investment today is done by angel investors, while as 26 by VCs and 8% around by the corporate venture capital, right? So when we consider about the trend of syndicates forming and investors investing in this syndicate, not directly on the cap table as well, right? How do we solve for the network and expertise that a lead investor will bring in the form of a VC when we compare it to an angel, syndicate? So how do we solve it? Of course, there are some mentorship platforms that are coming up, but what are the potential ways that we can look to streamline it? Yeah.
So Charlie, you want to give your perspective there? I will also add to this question later.
No, I mean, after you, I think you probably have a bit more context and could probably give a better answer than I could based on that question.
Yeah, I'll give my 2 cents on this. See, so what you're asking is that a lot of syndicates coming and giving money to founders and angels giving money to founders. How is that better or compared to how a VC would add value, correct?
Yeah, I mean, how we can solve for the network and expertise that the venture capital brings as well.
See, I think maybe your experience has been different, but when we interact with founders, why they want an angel network or a syndicate to work with them is actually for the two reasons you think are not applicable. I mean, for network effect, an angel network can actually provide a better support. In fact, our angels, because we have groomed them to work actively with founders, they are willing to give more hours to them. VCs, yes, they also bring a lot of expertise. They have better access to data. So how I explain this to founders is that at foundational levels, when a lot of VCs probably do not want to enter into companies, that is the time when a good active network can help you out because they would have access to people who have a lot of knowledge. These could be CXOs or these could be even partners of different VCs, right? Or different syndicates. A lot of times syndicates are run by people who have expertise in a couple of areas because they also have a thesis. They also have a team that they're working with. So it doesn't mean that, there's a difference in the knowledge that or the network effect that these different group of investors bring. I think you need to understand it also from the stage of the journey of a startup. Way more early in their journey, a syndicate or an angel network could be a very good support when a VC thinks it's too early for them. In fact, we court a lot of VCs for the uprounds that we plan for our companies. And when we do a lot of our investor events or VC Connect events that we do, a lot of venture capital funds and their partners attend those events because they want to look at the companies that we are funding. Does that sort of make sense? Like this is sort of I don't think one is comparable to the other because all of those people add value at different stages of the company.
No, absolutely, Bhavna, and I agree with that. And no, typically talking about a Series B or a Series C, right, where we have started showing interest in that matter, and also talking about Garuda Aerospace with the current round of $10 million raise, right? They are more focused towards raising the rounds to the angels or the family office themselves, and not really approaching funds. So that's a perspective I want to understand because majority of the companies are aiming for SME IPOs or IPOs without really unlocking themselves in the private market, right? And with a venture partner coming in who already has maybe an experience of bringing IPO twice a year, maybe from the same sector, right? So that kind of gives them an insight, which is not generally seen in the market.
Yeah, again, I think it's different for different companies. So, for example, I'll talk about Zip, right? Series C. This is the request from the founder. who wants the network to come again, because they have seen exceptional people coming in from the investor network who have been able to help these founders at different stages, right? If you're asking me as an investor, do we want to quote a lot of Series B, C companies? We are on the fence there. Like, yes, sometimes, no, sometimes, right? In terms of, let's say, I mean, Garuda quoting certain type of people for the next round. It depends on where the liquidity is. Right now, SME market is actually better. So they want to quote people who could probably provide them more visibility there. So I think it's situational and also depends on the stage of the company.
Okay, I think that solves most of the thing, Bhavna, and I'll thank you guys to be patient enough for the question as well. Thank you so
No,
much.
thanks, Pulkit, for asking us.
Yes, thank you.
I think I would love to wrap up right now. I know a couple of more people have questions. I think we could probably take them after the webinar. And I think if anyone wants us to direct them to Charlie, I can just connect them to Carta, and they could ask the questions, or they could probably figure out how they can work with you. Charlie, I really want to thank you for the time you've given us today, and Vanessa as well, and taking all the questions that you did. And yeah, we want to host you every time you're in India, and hope to have a long-term partnership with you all. Yeah, I mean, any last things that you want to share, Charlie?
I mean, first of all, I just want to say thank you once again for inviting me and Carter to participate in this. It's been a really kind of interesting and thought-provoking conversation. I hope it's added some value to the folks that have attended today, and more than happy to connect with people post this webinar too. And yeah, I mean, look, I think my sentiment's been pretty consistent in terms of what I feel about the Indian market. I'm looking forward to doing more stuff in India and working with, We Found a Circle and other partners on the ground there to really help founders realize, and to add value to the founders out there so they can focus on growing their businesses and scaling them.
Thanks, Charlie. And yeah, I mean, thanks for giving us the time today. Thank you for everyone for attending and listening to us. And we are happy to connect to all of you post the webinar. We look forward to any questions that you may have. And yeah, we would be hosting another webinar very, very soon with another partner who has a focus in different part of the world. We are very excited about these webinars, and we are definitely looking at, expanding outside of India and meeting more and more investors who want to be part of India's story. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.